the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. A reminder to everyone that request to speak cards should be completed and turned into the commission clerk. If you wish to speak to the commission regarding an item on tonight's agenda, please write the item number on your card. If you wish to speak on items not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of this commission, please do so during the general administrative section of tonight's agenda. All speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and televised, so all speakers, in order to be recognized, must be called on by the chair and come forward to the microphone. Speaking in public may cause some individuals to be uncomfortable, so everyone is asked to be professional and respectful at all times. So our first item of business tonight is the election of a chairperson for the Economic Development and Housing Commission, this commission. So I'm going to ask my fellow commissioners, are there any nominations for chairperson?
And to be clear, I can nominate myself if I so chose.
If you so choose. Commissioner Campbell.
I would nominate Nick Esquivel.
Commissioner Campbell has nominated Nick Esquivel. Are there any other nominations?
I would like to nominate myself.
Commissioner Esquivel nominates himself. Are there any others?
I'm not going to make any nominations.
Okay, well, Vice Chair Ron Price will also nominate himself for the position of chairperson. Is there any other nominations? Yes,
I was just going to say, what about the people that are not here?
you can nominate them.
Oh, okay. But I don't know if they want to be nominated, so.
Well, that is an issue.
So that's what kind of like I'm abstaining.
If there are no further nominations, I declare the nominations closed. The nominations for chairperson are Nick Esquivel and Ron Price. All those in favor of nominating Nick Esquivel to the office of chairperson, say aye.
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 All those opposed, no. All those, well, yeah, that's a quorum right there. So if there is a clear winner, Mr. Commissioner Esquivel, you are elected as chairperson of the Economic and Development Commission.
Thank you.
So now we have to move on for nominations for the vice chair.
Only if you do not want to keep the vice chair position.
Okay, well, unless I'm being challenged, I would like to stay as the vice chair.
Do you have any interest in
So now we can go ahead.
We can go ahead.
Go ahead and have me see if there are any other nominations.
Are there any other nominations for vice chair? No further nominations. I declare the nominations closed. The nominee for vice chair is Ron Price. All those in favor of electing Ron Price, the office of vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ron Price is elected to the office of Vice Chair. Thank you. Moving on. Excuse me.
Now you're going to switch.
Okay, so Commissioner Esquivel is now the chair, and I'll turn the meeting over to Commissioner Esquivel.
Thank you, Commissioner Price. Thank you, Commissioners, for the nominations. I look forward to serving in this capacity for this commission. So moving to the second item, General Admission Function Part 1, we have a presentation within the jurisdiction of the commission. Polly, are we moving to Function Part 1?
Yes, item 2.
All right. We have one request to speak card from, okay, I'm sorry. Thank you, Ron, clarifying that for me.
Mr. Chairman, there are no requests to speak during the opens.
Okay.
Item 2.
Just one moment. Thank you for your patience. 5. So we're skipping one?
Well, there, all you need
Okay.
is there's no.
So nothing on, okay, sorry, I was looking through mine for item number 2. Thank you, Ron. All right, moving on to item 3, consideration of approval of the meeting minutes from May 30th, 2018. Do we have any questions, comments, concerns regarding the May 30, 2018 meeting minutes? I would like to open it up for a motion to approve the meeting minutes from May 30th, 2018.
I make a motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Where are you?
All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The meeting minutes are approved. Moving on to the regular agenda. Item number 4. The objective of this is to provide information for the Economic Development Housing Commission. Recommend that the council approve the rotating winter shelter in West Sacramento. We have a presentation. Good afternoon. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairperson and members of the commission. Congratulations on the nomination.
Thank you.
This evening, staff is requesting that the commission recommend by vote that the council approve a pilot rotating warming center that would operate from late November 2018 to mid-March 2019. The rotating warming center would be operated by the Mercy Coalition of West Sacramento, which is an interfaith collaborative of local churches and faith organizations. The warming center would provide overnight shelter 2 to 5 days per week to a maximum of 20 adults per night at one of the participating facilities. As of today, 4 facilities have been tentatively identified for the rotating warming center. Those facilities are the West Sacramento Community Church, the Community Lutheran Church, Southport Church, and Lighthouse Covenant Church. Attachment 2 of the staff report has a map with the site locations of each of these 4, and we actually have it on the screen as well. Additional facilities from the coalition members could be added and others removed, depending on availability, so this is not the final list. As part of the vetting process, we are inspecting each of the sites along with the fire marshal and the building inspector to ensure that life safety concerns that would need to be addressed before the pilot program begins are addressed. Don from the Mercy Coalition has been helping us with scheduling those inspections, and we've been going out since last week at each of the sites. It's important to note that a specific location will be identified to perform the intake for the warming center participants. Participants will then be shuttled to the facility for that night and then be turned to the intake location the following morning. So generally, participants will remain indoors once they arrive at the facility for that evening, and they will be offered programs and services that would help them achieve self-sufficiency. However, these programs will not be a requirement. They will not be required to participate in them in order to be eligible to stay in the warming centers. Lastly, the coalition has agreed with work with staff and the city's homeless coordinator to identify a process to give priority to West Sacramento homeless or homeless that have some ties to West Sacramento. This has been something that the council has been concerned over and has directed staff in other projects that we look into. So we have asked the Mercy Coalition to work with us and try to identify a policy to ensure that primarily West Sacramento homeless residents are being served. This concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions that the council may have. That the commission may have.
Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments regarding this agenda item?
Mr. Huerta, thank you. Your last comment about residents and homeless, isn't there a contradiction in terms there? How are we going to determine the local preference?
That's a very good point that you make. So we will be working very closely with our homeless coordinator, who is out on a daily basis contacting West Sacramento homeless, trying to sign them up for services. And what the process that we have tentatively discussed is that he would be providing some type of a list to the coalition so that they can identify homeless that have some ties to West Sacramento. And the coalition would give priority to people that have been vetted and are on that list, that have been referred by our homeless coordinator. And that is really the only way that, at least at this point, we have identified to try to serve primarily West Sacramento homeless. But you're right, you bring up a very good point that it's difficult to identify West Sacramento homeless because by virtue of being homeless, they don't have an address, they don't have utility bills or anything of that nature that would typically identify somebody being from West Sacramento.
Okay, so essentially a referral from the homeless coordinator.
That is correct.
Is there any reason that the intake location has not been identified? Is that going to be a moving, rolling type location?
So my understanding is that the hope is to have one intake location, and they are still under discussions with the county to have the county services building be the intake site. They haven't formally reached an agreement, so that's why we didn't mention it. But my understanding is that that is the site that the coalition is in discussions with the county to make the intake location.
Okay. And the city is being asked to contribute $20,000 to this program?
That is correct. So the coalition has requested that the city fund up to 20% or $20,000 for the pilot program. What staff will be proposing is that we make our funds contingent upon the county also providing an equal amount of funding for the rotating warming center.
And there's a preliminary budget submitted here, and I don't see the city's contribution reflected in the budget.
That is correct. So the budget that they have submitted doesn't specifically outline the city funds, but it is incorporated into that budget. So $20,000 from the city, an additional $20,000 from the county, and the remainder would be covered by the coalition, primarily from the volunteer work that they will be doing and the materials that they will be providing for the participants.
And last, is there any matrix, or how do we determine if this program is a success or a failure?
We haven't identified a matrix. We can certainly circle back with the coalition to try to figure out a matrix, but certainly one would be the number of participants that are served during the week, during a month, or during the duration of the pilot program. The main purpose of the rotating warming center is to provide shelter, so that would be the primary outcome that we would measure.
Okay, I wish you success on the outcome of this program. I think it's needed. And again, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner Price. Anyone else? Any other commissioner?
Mr. Huerta, thank you. How are you?
Good, thank you.
I'd like to take a moment to publicly apologize to my fellow commissioners, city staff, and to the other public present for being late. It's evidence why you don't trust your Outlook calendar. The fool that does it, which would be me. Couple of questions. Trying to understand this, and the request of staff is prior or pre-approval of your proposal that would go to the city council, and I'm obviously recognizing there's some limits to what we're looking at. But in trying to understand it, if I see in your staff report the reference to the strategic plan, and then going back to that, I see an item under short-term challenges and opportunity. Number 2, addressing the homeless and illegal camping without expanding the city's mission or responsibility. Is that a fair reference to your source and authority for this? Okay.
Correct.
So really, the question is whether or not this program provides some relief of homelessness, illegal camping, without expanding the city's mission or responsibility. So the couple of things that just come to me, so I'm not looking at whether this is a strategic solution to homelessness, but specifically to relieve the camping and homelessness in the city. First question then, no liability to the city for the program. Each of the providers, as I understand, have $1 million insurance policy.
Correct. So the warming center will be operated by the Mercy Coalition. So any type of liability would be borne by the coalition and its members that are hosting the participants at their locations. The city would be providing grant funds to the purpose.
And then in line with that, I'm going to ask questions about additional costs that are not recognized in the $20,000 that may fall to the city. So police services, code enforcement, administrative contract management, all will be absorbed and not assumed to be significant because of the program structure and services provided by the Mercy Coalition?
That is correct. I mean, that would be just part of the normal services that are offered by our police department, our code enforcement. And again, this would be a grant that would be provided to the coalition. We would certainly be interested in seeing that the program is successful, so there would be some oversight. But whatever the number of staff time hours that are spent on these should not be significant, especially because of the duration of the program, which is only 4 months.
So within the strategic assessment of need, providing shelter, temporary shelter, and I understand this is maximum of 5 days a week, so at a minimum, there are 2 days that are unaddressed by the emergency services. Alternative program strategies, committing the funds to transportation to full-time shelters, the Yolo County Shelter in Woodland, those have all been considered, and this is a recognized need for short-term housing within the city of West Sacramento. Is it a fair assessment?
Correct. I mean, I believe that it's a recognition that we don't have a shelter or a warming center here in the city. Whenever we do get calls from individuals or families that are looking for an overnight center, we have to refer them to either Woodland, Davis, or even across the river to Sacramento. So it is a need, certainly, and if the pilot program is successful, we can certainly consider continuing the program, but that'll be something that the council will have to determine. But it is a temporary relief, and again, I think an understanding that we don't have anything here in the city specifically, that we're always having to refer people to other cities, other neighboring cities.
And if you would, one last question. How does this sync up with the voucher program that the city did operate in the past, vouchers for hotel?
We, as far as I know, we have never operated a voucher program. I believe that's operated through the county.
Okay.
I believe it's part of the CalWorks housing program. Maybe Don can help us. I know that he will be speaking shortly, and maybe he can provide a little bit more information if the coalition has any contacts with the county about referring people for vouchers that they can't serve. But at least as part of this specific program and something that the city has done in the past, we have not been involved in providing vouchers.
Okay, so this is a program to fill a very specific need, short term.
That is correct.
And not full scope of services.
That is correct.
All right, thanks for your help understanding it.
Thank you, Commissioner Campbell. Commissioner Bell?
Yes. Hi. Thank you very much for your presentation. And I'm really excited that West Sacramento is going to be having this rotating winter shelter because it's been much needed. And I'm very grateful for Mercy Coalition and their thoughtful plan and agenda. And I think that this is a wonderful opportunity for us to learn what is possible. I know that other cities are doing this with their local churches, and I'm just very excited to see this done. And I think it's been thoughtfully put together. My only real question was, in the budget, it doesn't speak towards the hotel vouchers for families, and it doesn't talk about, people with pets. I think one of the biggest concerns is making sure that our citizens are safe from the cold, and those with excess more than an overnight bag or an animal or children, they will be turned away. And from what I understand in the report, you're going to be given a hotel voucher, and there is no budget for that. And not to make this super complicated, but I'd also like to see something handled for pets and storage of a homeless person's items if it's more than an overnight, because I think that would prevent some people from being able to escape the cold winter nights and use the services.
We'll note that, and we'll see if we can. There's a way that we can work that into the this specific program, but I believe that the referral that they are we talk about in the staff report again would be a referral that the coalition would be making to the county for them to provide those vouchers, and Again, Don is probably better able to explain that process because it's not part of what the rotating warming center would be providing specifically, but that is other sources that they have when they can't serve families or people with pets. The purpose of this particular program is to serve individuals, a very limited number of individuals. But the coalition does have other resources and contacts that they can tap into to try to assist those homeless families or people with pets that they can't serve through this specific program.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. I just have one quick question. Given that the operating hours of this facility is going to be from 6 p.m. till 7 a.m., correct?
Approximately? Yes.
When we state that it is that services such as permanent housing, healthcare, mental health, employment, legal, credit, repair, substance recovery, that those services would be addressed. Are we saying that those would be addressed while they're there for the 13-hour term, or they'll be directed to those types of services through counselors or through the two staff that are being hired? That may be a better question for from Don from Mercy Coalition, but I was just curious. It wasn't really clear to me in this.
Correct, and I believe that the purpose is for them to, while they are there, that they have some information made available to them that will help them achieve self-sufficiency. They may not be able to go through an entire program, but at least provide them initial information and referrals to where they can get those services in the longer term. But it would be a way to use some of the time that they will be there, not just sitting around, but actually getting some useful information.
Okay. Well, that was my only question. Thank you very much, Mr. Huerta, for the presentation.
Thank you.
Now, we do have one request to speak card from Mr. Don Bosky. Is that correct? Mr. Bosky comes to us from Mercy Coalition, and he's here to add additional information to this agenda item.
All right.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Glad to be here. Appreciate the chance to get to address all of you. I'm the pastor at Lighthouse Covenant Church. It's also my real privilege to get to be the chair of the Mercy Coalition. And as Mr. Huerta explained, that is an interfaith collaborative of about a dozen local churches that have worked together for a number of years that really began just kind of on a handshake, helping the homeless. And now, almost to the day, for the last 5 years, every single weekday, the coalition has come together to feed the homeless. And they've done it on the corner where the county social services offices are. And so in addressing one of the questions that was asked is, how do we know that they're West Sacramentans? One of the ways is because we're out there every day, and we have some knowledge of the people who are regulars there. We already have ties with the population. Now, that's not to say there still will be a formal process that will run primarily through Mark Sawyer, so that we can have a very data-driven list of who qualifies and who gets preferential placement based on their residence. But know that we're already out there, and in the midst of that, we're out there with an MOU that already that has existed for 4 years with Yolo County and with the city, and that has been a nothing but a beneficial partnership for us to be able to do that. So, as these partnerships have grown up around us, we've had an opportunity to really watch our network expand and gain some understanding. The nuts and bolts of this pilot are in your package. I want to address a couple of the questions that I heard. I'm going to go off my script here a little bit for you. Children, families with children. Families with children do not stay outdoors if they come near us. I'm just telling you, there's a voucher program in place. It's really not part of the winter shelter program. We get those calls now from school district, from other churches, from Mark, from others. So that we have some funds available separately, but we're going to get families shelter because usually Mark and other programs can get them into a longer term space within 48 hours. So a couple of hotel nights, that'll be in place. And if anybody shows up in an intake site with children, that'll be our default. So the services issue of bringing additional services around these folks, we'll get them to any given church at about 6 o'clock. And then we've got those evening hours. The volunteers from the coalition churches will be bringing in hot meals on those nights. And there'll be a window 3 or 4 hours for its lights out. And in that time, we see an opportunity for whether it's health care or legal services, many of the things that many of them will have had access to in Mark Sawyer's time. He has an open door every Thursday morning to meet with folks. But nevertheless, we think it's an additional opportunity to bring some wraparound services around those folks. And it may be other things such as, somebody volunteering to do haircuts, somebody, things that are a little simpler, maybe not as critical, but still nice to have. So we're hoping that from within the faith community and the larger community, that'll be possible. I want to tell you that there has been such a faithful integration in this plan of best practices. We have culled them from similar models at the Interfaith Rotating Winter Shelter in Davis and at the Sacramento Triage Shelter, 200 beds in Sacramento, and at First Steps Communities in Sacramento. We have a lot of those folks are on our board. And they're bringing in expertise that I'm just a country pastor. I don't have that expertise, but those people do. And so we've been blessed to be surrounded by those. We have an expectation that with this pilot program that we will start by doing it as well as we know how, and a great hope that from there we will then just get better. And we'll figure out the different, the only way to do it is to be out there and experiencing it. We don't have the capacity at the outset to be able to handle pets and things. And part of our decision as we piloted is we deliberately set a low ceiling at just 20 beds. Certainly there may be more than 20 people that need shelter on any given night. Our biggest goal with this pilot is to learn to do it well. As much as it may be hard to leave some folks out, right now we want to learn how to do this well so that we can keep doing it and do it better and better and not run ahead of our capacity to do so. So for now, unfortunately, we don't have the capacity to help folks with pets, and we do know that's going to be a disqualifying factor for some. And maybe there will be an answer that will present itself somewhere along the line as we kind of get our stake in the ground. It's a daunting thing, inviting the homeless in. The very reasons that neighbors and businesses are afraid to have the homeless near are the very same reasons that congregants in churches might raise an eyebrow, or some of them just go, wait a minute, and that is that's a real thing. And make no mistake, there are no mega churches in West Sacramento. There's nobody here with a sprawling campus of buildings where you might be able to put the homeless out on some fringe in some building somewhere. When the West Sacramento churches are inviting the homeless in, we're inviting them into primary facilities. Lighthouse is a former bar out in Southport. There's only so far we can go in that place, and the others are similar. But yet, for all of that, in faith, the churches of West Sacramento are poised to take a bold step. We believe we are on course to have 3 to 5 host churches. We believe that many others that cannot provide facilities, including numerous that meet in schools right now, will be rallying their manpower to bring volunteer to go alongside our paid professional staff that we will have on site every night. Faith and mercy compel us to move beyond our apprehensions. A great percentage of our homeless are mentally ill. They really are. A great many are physically disabled. They're sickly. They're veterans. When the storms are pounding and the temperatures are dropping, the idea of leaving those folks out in the cold while our church buildings sit unused overnight is really untenable. It's really hard to. I've sat there on those nights and went, I got a warm building. How can we make this work? And a lot of the other faith leaders feel the same way. And there's many, many obstacles. Some of us have old buildings, and it's been an interesting thing as we've gone through with inspectors trying to bring it up. But we're gonna do it. We're gonna figure out how to do it. So as a faith community, we're ready to put our skin in the game. I know I'm over 3 minutes. I'm sorry, but I'm grateful that you guys would consider. The city and the county have been incredible partners along this thing, and it's a tricky issue. It's really hard to keep everybody happy in this, but appreciate that you're willing to consider it. I would certainly be remiss if I didn't close with just telling you that your city staff, Mr. Huerta and Ms. Whitaker, have been outstanding in shepherding us through this and taking a very can-do approach. I just can't express the excellence of their work and the appreciation we have for what they do. So I want you guys to know that. So thanks. Appreciate the time.
Thank you very much. It's extremely commendable what you're doing. This is an issue facing not just the city of West Sacramento, but the state and the country as a whole. So we really appreciate. Did the commissioners have any questions for the speaker or any comments?
I have a comment, which is that I think that when we all invest in this community, is social value investing, whether it's with our churches and our private industry and our cities, that's how the dream really works. So thank you very, very much for taking this bold step and making this come to a fruition that I've been wanting this forever. So I'm super jazzed about it, and I plan on volunteering in all the ways I can.
Commissioner Campbell, did you have?
I said one follow-up question. Given the need, and to either one of you, it doesn't irrelevant, being an old budgeteer, why 20,000? What's the magic in the 20,000? Why not more? What am I missing here?
100,000 does seem like a
I think we calculated what it was going to take, and we knew that we had a general hope from both the city and the county that there would be the ability to match funds in that. So knowing about what we needed in order to get it done, I think we simply came in at half. Is that a misstatement? I think that's okay. Yeah.
Fair. Great. Thanks.
Just an additional comment something that came to mind. Just because I am familiar with the Mental Health Oversight Accountability Commission, something Darrell Steinberg started when he was the senator. I think there would be some. They actually had a difficulty getting that money out on the street a number of years ago, and it's something that now Mayor Steinberg has criticized some of the counties for. I'm not. This has nothing to do with Yolo County. It's just a criticism of counties having issues receiving that money. So I think there may be an opportunity for additional state funding through the Mental Health Oversight Accountability Commission. I know there's a lot of we are flush with money as a state right now, and mental health and healthcare is a huge priority. So I look forward to working with city staff and Mercy Coalition to identify more funding, because 100,000 seems like a very small budget for what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, it goes beyond just serving meals and housing people when you take them in. So
yeah, this is a pilot.
Yeah.
I have a real hope of standing for you a year from now and going, this is how it went. This is what we learned. This is what we're doing better, and now we're ready to really do it big. That's my hope. That's my prayer. So, thanks for your time.
Thank you. Do we have one more?
No, so at this point, what we would ask is that the commission take a vote
Okay.
to either recommend or not recommend that the council approve the pilot rotating warming center.
I would take a motion to make a recommendation to the city council to approve the implementation of the Mercy Coalition Rotating Winter Shelter Program.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Measure is approved.
Thank you.
And the last item on our agenda is information on the Parks and Open Space Master Plan update from city staff. Michelle?
Good evening,
Good evening.
Commissioners. I'm Tracy Michael.
Michael, I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's spelled kind of funny. I am the business manager for the Parks and Recreation Department. And I have a presentation for you tonight. I'm going to try to go through it pretty quickly so we can always come back to slides. I'm happy to answer questions at the end, but it's a lot of information. So I'm excited to share information with you about this update because we've been waiting a long time to get this underway. Our current master plan, our Parks Master Plan, was adopted in 2003, and since then a lot has changed in our community. The landscape's changed a lot, specifically with all of our levee improvement projects. They've actually created some new recreation opportunities for us. We've constructed a lot of projects that were identified in the 2003 plan, including our rec center and our community center that houses our senior center. Albeit the locations weren't as originally identified in the plan, they've been built. And then our General Plan 2035 document calls for updating the Parks Master Plan every 10 years. So we're a little behind schedule, but we're working hard to get on track. So I know this is a very sensitive, there we go. Just talk a little bit about the process for this update. It's about identifying where we are today, where we want to go tomorrow, and how we're going to get there. And what this plan is really grounded in is looking at the total cost of ownership. We selected a firm called Pros Consulting to help us with the update effort. We started that a little under a year ago. Primarily, we spent the first 4 to 6 months collecting a lot of information that addresses where we are today, and I'll touch on that in a minute. But where we want to go tomorrow and how do we get there is really important for us because we want to have a 10-year plan that can be implemented and that is sustainable. And a lot of times we look at the one-time cost to get projects built, but don't necessarily incorporate the long-term O&M or life cycle replacement costs for projects. And we've definitely gotten feedback from our community that maintaining our existing facilities is a priority. And as we grow our facilities, we want to make sure we have the resources to continue to maintain them. So we did develop a project website for this effort, planwestsacparks.com. You can also access it on our parks homepage on the city website. We've used the website over the past 9 months to share information, to collect general information. People can provide comments at any time on the website. In fact, we've actually used it for some current planning efforts. Most recently, the Memorial Park ADA Upgrades Project. We had people log on to our website and provide feedback about the different design options that we shared at the open house. So if they couldn't make it, they could visit the information on this Parks Master Plan update website and provide feedback. We've also had a number of surveys, intercept surveys that we've worked to administer with city staff and other facilities, both in hard copy form and online via SurveyMonkey. We had them available at our community center, here at City Hall, at our rec center, at the library, and anytime we had a city-sponsored event in the community, I had a booth where I had information to try to garner feedback from the community about what their needs are and their interests. In addition to these surveys, we also did something called a statistically valid survey, and you may have gotten something in the mail. These were distributed to residents in the city, not every resident, but a large sampling of residential addresses to try to obtain information that was both demographically and geographically representative of the city. Our goal was to get 375 responses. We got more than that in a record amount of time, so we feel really good about the information that we received. And this is just a map that shows where we received our responses. So you can see that the responses came from areas where primarily our residents live. And so we did get a really good geographical representation from the community. Community needs. So we used the survey information in addition to some feedback that we received from stakeholders to put together a list of prioritized projects. It was an iterative and interactive approach to prioritizing facilities and programs, and I'm going to just highlight the results. Oh, let's go back. Okay, so 2 categories. The first is in our facilities, so looking at our parks, our buildings, and amenities. And what you see from this slide is that we categorize the items into high, medium, and low priority. Doesn't mean that we don't do medium or low priority items. It's just those might be more strategically placed or invested in the city. The high items, number 1 item, walking and biking trails. I mean, by a landslide. And then we also have nature parks, open space areas, covered picnic areas, shaded play areas, which we've been hearing that feedback from our residents for a while now, but it was nice to have this data to help validate that. And then we also have on the programming side, the top 2 categories were community special events, whether they be city-sponsored or private events available to the public, and health and wellness programs. Now, I have dozens of pages of data collected from these surveys. I'm just giving you kind of the overview of them, but it was really interesting to see how much interest there was in community special events. And that a lot of people wanted better access to our health and wellness programs, but the majority of people didn't know about our programs. So we do offer a lot of them, and they ranked very highly, but our takeaway message was that we could have even more participation if we can just figure out how to target the information to our community. So park classifications. The primary topic of my presentation today is about something we call level of service analysis. What are our unmet needs in the community based on some of the targets we've set for ourselves as a city? But before I get to that, I want to touch on park classifications because that plays into how we evaluate how we're doing. With our parks, we've got pocket parks, which are smaller parks. They tend to be in urban locations and a lot of planned communities. Sometimes where you have some leftover space, you can green it. You can maybe put in a few amenities and make it, a nice gathering space. They can be used heavily, even if they're small, especially in urban areas. Garden Park is a prime example of a smaller park that meets a lot of needs for the Bridge District neighborhood and even folks who don't live in that neighborhood. Neighborhood parks, they're larger parks. They typically have play structures, picnic tables and chairs. Maybe you might have some play fields. They tend to be used by or geared towards use by the adjacent neighborhood. So a lot of times in neighborhood parks, you will not find things like restrooms or additional parking because they're really meant to serve the people who live immediately adjacent to the neighborhood parks. Community parks have everything neighborhood parks have and more. Our consultant likes to say they're neighborhood parks on steroids. This is where you will find people staying longer. Sometimes there are play fields or sports courts to foster longer use of the park. And that's where you'll also see restrooms and parking to support people coming from further away to use the facility. And then we have regional parks, which are parks that go beyond serving the community and serve the region. Sports complexes, which are kind of self-explanatory, basically athletic fields, green belts, trails, and recreation corridors. and then conservation parks or open space areas. I didn't touch on the acreage too much because our parks in this city tend to be a little bit smaller in size. So Memorial Park's a good example. It might not meet the national general criteria for the size of a community park, but it's being used by the entire community. So we're looking at how our parks are being used for the classifications. And then we go into our level of service standards. So I've got a couple of different ways I'm going to share information. I've got spreadsheets and I have maps. So this first spreadsheet you see looks at what we spent the first few months really honing in on, our current inventory. And this is inventory parkland that is owned by both the city and other owners. In our case, the port and the school district are primary owners of a lot of our park land. And then we have a total inventory. So towards the left side of the table, you see our total inventory of park acreage, which is just under 200 acres. This comes into play when looking at our General Plan 2035 document, which identified a target for us to reach 5 acres of parkland per 1,000 residents. So when you look at our current population and you look at how much park acreage we currently have, what you see as you scroll to the right of the table is that we have 3.7 acres of parkland per 1,000 residents today. That's based on our population today, our current park acreage today. As you move to the right into the future, you see what that looks like as our population grows. So right now, we currently have a deficit of 66 acres of parkland, and it's broken up into the different park classifications that I just walked through. As we go further into the future to 2027, we have almost 100 acres of additional park acreage needs if we're going to meet the targets that we set for ourselves. So we did the same thing for outdoor amenities and just looked at our play fields and baseball diamonds and reservable picnic shelters. And you can see a lot of red on here. We have a very, very high need for athletic fields. We have a high need for tennis courts. We don't have any publicly accessible tennis courts. The ones that we have now are part of the rec center, and you have to be a member to use them. And reservable picnic shelters is like a simple thing, but I'll show you maps of them in a minute, and we've got real gaps in our system. So it's just really helpful to take a look at this and see where we need to go in the future to meet our community's needs. We did the same thing for recreation corridors and indoor facilities, and I want to point out that for recreation corridors/trails, we have a target of half a linear mile per 1,000 residents. Based on all of our existing trails to date, we meet that target, but that doesn't mean we're not going to focus on trails. We have trails that we still need to work on connecting them and improving them so that they're accessible. We've technically kind of met our target, but we still have a lot of work to do. And we're doing very well with our indoor facilities. As we've spent the last 10 years, we've constructed a lot of facilities. So I'm going to show you an equity mapping exercise we did, which just plots where we have the existing different types of parks and where we start to see gaps in our system in terms of access to recreation opportunities. So this is a map that highlights our pocket parks. The radius, the circles, the sizing is based on either the park size. So if it's a small park, that makes a difference. If there's dense population around it, that makes a difference too. So if it's small and it serves a lot of people in a small radius, then that service area is going to be smaller. So this is what it looks like for pocket parks. We did the same thing for neighborhood parks. In the southern portion of the city, we don't have a lot of development down there yet, so we know that there will be parks coming in the future. This is what it looks like for community parks. The different colors represent ownership. It's green if it's city-owned. It's blue if it's other-owned. Our regional parks, which tend to be kind of water-focused features. Our Barge Canal access area, as small as it is a regional feature. And then also along the waterfront Riverwalk Park, which is probably our most popular special event location. And then our special use parks. We did the same thing for all of the different amenities, the play fields, the baseball diamonds. This is just an example of what it looks like for the picnic shelters. So you can see that we have a few right now. We just recently added a beautiful one at Bright Park, and so that was really nice. But we could definitely use more in the community. So then we looked at what's happening in the future. We've got developments that are planned but not yet built. So when we looked at all of the parkland being considered as part of those future developments, we have over 472 acres of future parkland that's planned but not yet built. So if you think back to the table that showed where our park acreage deficits were, we're hitting that as long as the developments move forward and we get these parks constructed. So this is important message for us as we're planning, because what it tells us is that we don't need to really be in the business of acquiring land for parks. We just need to help foster the developments that are already on the books. So when we take that table, that level of service table that we walked through a few slides ago, and then add in now all the future parkland that's planned but not yet built, what you see is that we have come very, very close to hitting our level of service targets, which shows that we're short 7 acres in the neighborhood park category. So we did an equity mapping exercise looking at the existing plus the future parks, and you can start to see that we are filling in the gaps. So our pocket parks, our neighborhood parks, our community parks, and our regional parks. The regional parks cover the entire community. Special use facilities. And then I'd like to transition to another topic, site-specific concept master plan. So as part of this exercise, the master plan update, we included in the scope creating some site-specific concept plans for sites, because we knew that we would need to do that to help position some sites for grant funding that's going to be coming down the line. The more advanced you are in the planning stages for park projects, the more competitive you are. And we had some opportunities based on other efforts that were going on. So we did 3 different site-specific plans. The first was for the Central Park concept. Originally, we had a Central Park concept in the 2003 plan that was located in the Stone Lock area. It was a very large park. A good portion of that footprint has been consumed by levee improvements. So we knew we needed to revisit that anyway, just to address that footprint change. But also some of the programming components that were included in the original Central Park concept have already been built in other locations. We have our rec center, we have our community center, and those absorbed some of the programming components. And then we also just kind of looked at the development capacity of Stone Lock and the economic viability of how much land really needs to be developable to support future recreation development. And that was coupled with all of the work that economic development has been doing in the Pioneer Bluff deindustrialization analysis and the Stone Lock reuse plan. And we worked hand in hand with economic development and our community development and public work departments to see how we could revisit this park and address the reuse master planning, the new development, sustainability, formulas that are being used today, because the economic reality of today and development today is very different than what it was in 2003, and flood protection, which is really changing the landscape of the city. So we have a revised Central Park concept that we're really excited about. This it creates a centrally located venue, just like the 2003 Central Park concept had, but it works to provide a seamless transition between flood protection, between economic development activities, between recreation, between open space, habitat conservation, so that the user experiences one linear park that has a lot of different unique experiences, but really it's accomplishing a lot of different objectives. And that was one of the emerging issues we started to identify as we walked through this planning effort, was that there's a real opportunity for economic development to create park development opportunities, and for park development opportunities to maybe sometimes even lead the way for economic development opportunities. So what this park concept reflects is multiple areas. We have, there we go. We have the Barge Canal access area here on the south side of the Barge Canal access, which includes a neighborhood park, trails, and it also provides space for private development that's currently in process. We have the northern portion of the Barge Canal area up here, which takes a look at expanding onto other property as it becomes available, expanding Sam Combs Park, maybe an arboretum, providing some access to the water. And then it looks at Stone Lock Plaza, adaptive reuse of the navigation lock facility to create kind of a really interesting urban gathering space experience that could include a splash park, concessions, a pedestrian bridge crossing over. So just kind of a really dynamic, unique space. And then as you move towards the Sacramento River, a little bit more of passive recreation, neighborhood park, adaptive reuse of the wastewater treatment plant. So this is another view of what that could look like. And as we move forward in this process, we're being very mindful of ways that we can set the stage. So whatever component moves forward first can take into consideration this type of concept so that we're creating the space and a path for this new revised Central Park concept. The other two sites we looked at were school district sites, and we did this because both the city and the school district were interested in exploring ways that we could add to our joint use facility portfolio. It's a win-win for the city and the school district because we don't have to acquire land to provide recreation space, and we make the improvements and maintain the space for the school district. So we have a really good relationship with the sites that we currently work with the district on, and we explored some other options to add sites to our joint use agreement. So the first site is the Washington Middle College Prep Charter School site. This is a site that could serve as a neighborhood park in an area that's very developed, heavily populated, and lacks neighborhood park space. So you'd see typical improvements here that are in a neighborhood park, a playground, internal walking path, maybe some courts, tennis or pickleball courts. There's certainly room for it. Multi-purpose playfield, and this, like our other joint use facilities, could be made available to the neighborhood after school and on the weekends, but it would also serve the students at school. This just shows our equity mapping with the added neighborhood park. So we're not including these school district sites in our plan right now because it's dependent on the school district's long-term facility planning. But we went through this exercise just to see what the possibilities could be for these sites. So the map on the left shows the State Street neighborhood, and there is no neighborhood park in that neighborhood right now. If you flip to the map on the right, with the addition of that charter school site used as a neighborhood park, you can see that we've now filled in the gap in that neighborhood. The second site we looked at was the Westmore Oaks K-8 school site, which was formerly River City High School. We have a very high need for playfields, for athletic fields, and this site looked like a really good fit for athletic fields. It doesn't serve as well for a regular public park because it's located behind the school, not terribly visible from the street or accessible, but it could make a great athletic complex where it can be used by the students during the day, and it could be programmed for public use in the evenings and weekends. This version looks at incorporating the entire playfield site as well as the bus yard and the solar panel area. We also have an alternative that leaves the bus yard and the solar panel array in place, and it just demonstrates that there is a lot of opportunity to accommodate the Sycamore Trail overpass that will land at the northern portion of the site and create some play fields. So we'll continue to work with the school district as they move forward with their long-term facility planning. But as we look at the future parks that are currently planned but not yet built, some of them aren't sized to accommodate a sports complex type of use. So we think that partnering with the school district could be a really great opportunity to consolidate some of those play fields. And this is the equity mapping that just shows, this neighborhood in terms of community parks. The closest community park is up at Bright and Alice Norman. If we were able to use a site like Westmore Oaks as a community serving park, you'd see it really fills in the gap in the central and northern portions of the city. So next steps, where we're at right now, is really about the numbers. We are working on developing our 10-year capital improvement program. We're looking at the costs of projects, how we prioritize them to leverage resources, to make the most impact possible, and then use that information to update our park impact fee as well. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, any questions, comments? Commissioner Price?
Thank you for the presentation. I know that parks are really a reflection of the quality of life in cities. You mentioned the Riverwalk Park as one of the most used facilities in the city. My question is, what is the city going to do south of Tower Bridge all the way down to the new pier? To me, that seems like an extension of the Riverwalk Park, but I see very little construction or renovation or improvements.
Would you like to respond to that?
Is the question, are you wanting to know the timeline for adding additional amenities along the pedestrian bicycle trail in the Bridge District?
Yeah, from the bike trail to the river. I mean, the consensus here in Sacramento is that the river on both sides have been neglected as a natural amenity. And to me, there's an opportunity to enhance recreation and at the same time access to the river.
So both cities jointly started planning created a joint riverfront master plan, I believe, in 2005. And then when we updated the Bridge District specific plan around 2009, entered into development agreements and dedicated financing mechanisms. That park the Riverwalk is ultimately designed, and you could see the plan and the vision for that park in those documents. It's an expensive, it's sort of the heart of the Bridge District, so it has been, in terms of the financing plan, a lot of funding has been programmed to build it out, but we have to, it's kind of a long-term project, and we will probably, the timing of some of those amenities would be proximate to when private development is happening. But there is a large plaza in the middle and a lot more amenities that are planned along that span of the riverfront. The Unger project is probably going to start construction in November. That's just to the south of Ballpark, and we will probably be doing some city investments along with that project to create some more amenities in that area. And then the barn, of course, is a huge, beautiful, plaza gathering space that promotes community. The Mill Street Pier was rehabbed, and we'll have a grand opening of some new kinetic art that's just finishing up on that. And there's the other large sculpture was installed last November. So I feel that there is a focus to continue to prioritize investments from the dedicated funding sources, but we still have to work with the availability of of those funds.
Okay, so it's not being neglected, it's just kind of
Perhaps it's moving slower than we would have liked, but it's absolutely planned and prioritized for investment, and it's mandatory investment. It is in the financing plan considered to be a backbone investment. In other words, the development agreements, entitlements are dependent on certain park amenities being built, and that's one of them. So it can't be ignored.
And the Unger project is a market rate apartment building, is that what that is?
Correct. It's about 265 units with a 5-story parking structure and about, I think, 16,000 feet of retail. That estimate might be a little off. That will be fronting on Riverfront Street. Some of it's essentially an apartment that has no back of house, so it has stoops onto Ballpark. It has a lot of apartment amenities on facing the riverfront, so that in and of itself will activate the riverfront, bring a lot more people, eyes on the riverfront. There's fairly generous balconies on the upper stories. So we do expect that to move forward.
Okay, thank you for the update. And thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Just help me understand. We talked a little bit about the funding and the dependence on development, particularly some of the smaller parks. I assume they are tied to either development fees or they're funded by the developer over time. This as a part of the general part of the general plan helps to direct park development in the city, but doesn't develop a financing plan, or it's not accompanied by a financing plan. Can you help me understand then how you understand these projects being financed over time? How do they work together?
Well, we're working on that right now. There are different funding strategies for different areas of the city. Like Katie was just mentioning, the Bridge District is its own district and has its own funding strategy for funding park development. We'll likely see the same thing happen in the Pioneer Bluffs and Stonelock area as that moves forward. That is the case for Yarborough and River Park based on the development agreements that are in place today. And so we're looking at what that means for the rest of the city, where we have projects that might not be located as part of planned developments. There aren't a lot of them, actually, because most of the parks that are planned are part of special districts or larger planning areas. But we're looking at that right now, and we're looking at a variety of non-traditional funding sources that we might be able to start considering for park development, in addition to leveraging our resources as much as possible to accomplish park and recreation development. It's something that we're spending some time on, which is one of the reasons why the process has gone a little bit slower, because we want to make sure that what we set out to accomplish in 10 years, we can accomplish in 10 years. So we're trying to be realistic, also be visionary, and have some exciting features as part of our plan, but really put together something that's sustainable. And that's where I get back to the total cost of ownership as well, looking at what do we need to have long-term to maintain these facilities, because the funding sources for maintenance and life cycle replacement may be different. Mm-hmm. So we are looking at all of that right now.
Okay. If one last follow-on, if I understood you, the areas of the city that are built out, State Streets, Bright, Broderick, currently have a sufficient distribution of the categories of parks, and if not, there would be the need to identify funding for those, since they are not tied to new development or economic growth. Is that how I understood it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great, thanks.
Commissioner Bell?
Thanks for the presentation. I appreciate it. And my only question was, When will you know if the school is going to be on board? When will they be done with their planning? And is there, because that is a big portion of this general plan update, are those two parks. And do you have an alternative if those don't come to fruition?
I'm not sure what exactly the timeline's going to be for the school district. We'll continue to work with them, and we are not assuming those projects will be part of our 10-year Parks Master Plan. So when we look at how we prioritize projects to meet the needs of the community, it might be that we need playfields, so we might be able to reposition some of our parks where we currently have space to provide some of those playfields. Maybe they don't exist today, but maybe there's a way to enhance existing facilities to better meet those needs. So that's an option. It also, it may help us to prioritize the future planned parks. Maybe we try to prioritize the ones that offer us the programming and amenities that we know our community needs first.
I understand. Okay. And you had said that there are two properties or two types of properties that are not owned by the city, which is the port property and the school districts. And so my other question is how are approvals going with the port district and the combined use of city parks and on that property? And what is the liability, or what are the chances of this, I guess, in the big picture of things?
Well, I think as properties start to transition, we'll formalize the arrangement on the site control. That's one of the things we're looking at right now as part of this Parks Master Plan. What do we need to do to secure that, if anything at all? It might mean that we just need to better formalize an agreement between the city and the port on the few properties that we have right now. It might mean that might change in the future as additional property becomes available, especially in the Central Park area. So that's something that we're looking at as part of this process.
And you're calling the Central Park the area of the locks and the barge canal,
yes.
Right? Okay. I had a question about what would happen to our dog park if Stone expands. That would be, but maybe that's just me. My other real question was, oh gosh, I just lost it. What are you going to do with all the extra acreage of park that you had identified, almost 500 acres, which is about 4 times what is needed? And you're just going to kind of keep that as open to possibilities, or do you have a plan?
Yes. So those are all of the park acreage that's planned but not yet built. And quite frankly, a lot of that park acreage is housed as part of the Yarborough development. There's a large regional lake park. There's the golf course. We don't own it all. We won't own it all.
That's Yarborough acres.
And we won't be required per the development agreement to maintain it all either. Mm-hmm. We have tried to we are looking at right now what we think is going to come online in the next 10 years. And, we're just making our best guess at how much of that land is actually going to be developed in a 10-year window. And, not a lot of it will be. We're making assumptions. So, but we'll factor that into our financial analysis. How much of that are we going to be responsible for maintaining, and how much are we not going to be? And use that to inform how we move forward.
Well, thank you for the presentation. It's wonderful
Welcome.
to see the expectations for the next years to come.
Thank you.
Just a couple quick questions. One of your slides had a priority of usage from high, medium, low.
Mm-hmm.
What was that taken from?
That was a result of all of our different surveys, as well as our stakeholder meetings, and using that to just identify the priorities based on the feedback we received. It's also coupled with institutional knowledge that we have about what might be coming down the line, where we might have other city policy that might prioritize certain things. So it's kind of a really iterative process that resulted in this prioritization. And what you find on both the programming and the facility side are the pieces, the components that rank the highest are the ones that serve the largest number of people. The ones that are more specialized, serve a smaller portion of the population, are the ones that rank lower, which doesn't mean we're not going to do it. It just means that we're more strategic about how we do it and when we do it.
I saw pickleball pretty low on that survey.
Pickleball didn't come back,
unfortunately.
even though it's doing
Could.
really well nationally. It didn't come back that high with our survey information.
I was surprised that the equestrian was low on that as well. But
I think that's
you know,
because we have a smaller population
Got it, of the 51, got
that
it.
Is focused on that. It's just about how many people would be using or experiencing that program or facility.
Understood. Well, thank you very much. That was a very thorough report.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
One
Commissioner
more.
Campbell has one more.
If you don't mind, just one other question. You didn't address it, and I know you did in your strategy, but bike trails, parking, transportation to these facilities, that's all integrated in this in terms of locating and sizing these, I'm sure.
Yes, and we've been working very closely with our public works staff that recently updated the bike ped trail master plan so that everything that was part of the parks master plan is included in the bike ped trail master plan, and we'll be working as we move forward concurrently to identify who's going to be responsible for funding those improvements. Maybe it's both plans, both fees. Maybe it's more of one for one type of trail or trail amenity. So we're working through that now, but it's in both. It will be in both places, and it's definitely a priority in both documents.
The reason it came to mind is the Central Park. It would be unfortunate to create something with such a deference to the environment and then have to build a giant parking space for our parking lot to accommodate. So I just thought of the relationship between the transportation plan and the park plan.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any further? All right. Moving on to the general admission part 2. Do we have any requests or comments from commissioners? Hearing none. Staff updates?
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Please, I was appointed as Economic Development Director in July. This is my first meeting, and I'm looking forward to supporting your commission as we move forward. The next meeting is scheduled for November 28th. The general updates that I have about economic development activities in the city, we are scheduling an event, a joint celebration of both the barns opening, the drakes at the barns opening, and also the installation of new kinetic art on the pier. That's tentatively scheduled for October 29th, so I'll make sure that you would get invitations to that. We had an art selection for a temporary art installation being funded by National Endowment of the Arts grant. We had a panel selection last Friday, and 4 finalists were selected, and those would be coming forward to the Arts Commission, but I'd be happy to also make a presentation to your commission if you're interested, as we're really looking at art, public art, as part of our land use requirements and as a catalyst for economic development. The West Capitol Avenue project is having a community meeting on October 2nd from 5:30 to 7:30 here in City Hall. Wanted to let you know the Washington Infrastructure project, which has been underway for about a year now all over the Washington area. You've probably seen the streets have been shut down at times. That is scheduled to complete in December of 2018. And also there is an art project as part of that, which is a sidewalk poem, and that's going to start installation October 24th. Also wanted to let you know that the city manager made a presentation to the CalSTRS board. CalSTRS is entering into the last analysis and phases of looking at constructing their second tower at that location. So CalSTRS is expected to make a decision on that around, if not in November, which is currently scheduled. I attended the meeting. It seemed that some of the board members were asking for additional time, so it may be more January, February timeframe when they make that decision.
The timeline on the barn, I get a lot of questions about that.
So currently, the barn is targeting a soft opening on October 10th and then a hard opening on October 20th, fully to the
Exciting.
public.
Thank you. I think you still covered calendar of events there in that one.
Did you say sidewalk poem installation?
Yes.
That sounds awesome. Where is that going to be at?
It's on E Street between 5th and 3rd. It's, we did last year a solicitation. We offered $5,000 for a poem about the river. And we selected this amazing poem by Jeff Noor. He's really a distinguished writer. I think he's a professor at Sac City. And then we hired a graphic artist who's created some beautiful bronze inlays. So the poem is being, the font of the poem is inlaid into granite pieces, which are scattered between 5th Street. And to read the poem, you end up at the river, basically. And then there's these beautiful graphics that will also be out of brass and inlaid into the concrete that also evoke the river. So that was funded by a state grant for a climate investment fund grant to the city. It was part of the infrastructure project that we proposed and part of demonstrating sustainability and creating healthier, more walkable communities.
Awesome. And then you had said that there was a panel that you've selected, and that installation is for what
So
project?
we also received a National Endowment of the Arts grant. The cities partnered together, Sacramento, West Sacramento, and the Crocker Art Museum were all partners in that project. We received $125,000, which we've all matched with the same amount, so it's about $250,000 budget. So that's funding a master plan that each city is doing about how we connect and create walking, biking paths that are infused with art and create more vibrant neighborhoods and encourage walking, biking as opposed to automobile trips. So we received that in 2015. SMAC had sort of a change of staff, so we got slowed down in our schedule, but we have gotten an extension. So the panel met. So part of this grant is that we have to do an installation. So we decided to do temporary work because it would give more opportunities for more artists. And the objective that the artists have to meet is that this artwork has to bridge the river in some way. It has to really speak to the idea that we are one community. And so we got 70 really strong proposals. We had a great panel, very diverse panel meet last Friday, and they've selected 4 finalists. And so those finalists will be given a stipend to evolve more refined proposals.
Exciting. Thank you for that info.
Any other questions or comments? I think you covered all the calendar of events. Is there anything missing from that, Polly?
Nope.
All right. Last item. I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Also move.
We have a second.
A second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. We are adjourned. What time? 7:44.